for joining us. Excited for today's presentation and our guest speaker. Thanks for those who introduced themselves. We are covering a very timely topic and great news that this is also going to be featured at the Tableau conference. So this is an early preview of, I think, of a topic that is relevant to many of us. All of us are exploring sort of our environment where Tableau lives. And so delighted to have Evan joining us and imparting his expertise on a topic that is not always clear on what to do, how to do it, and there's tons of questions. So please put your questions in the chat, and I will hand it over to Evan to introduce himself and begin his presentation.
All right. Great, thank you. And appreciate that introduction. So as Ron said, I'm Evan Alini with Vanderbilt University. Been here, in fact, next month I'll celebrate my 3-year anniversary with them. But I got quite a history with Tableau in the past. I was a former employee and worked through COVID, got laid off as they were part of Salesforce, but I had been 8 years with Tableau in their global services and other divisions. In fact, this year I'll be going to my 10th conference. So I'm excited about that too. So let me get shared here and we can get started. Oh, yeah, mirror effect, sorry about that. All right, so we're all here to talk about cloud migration from server, and I expect questions. I know others will be manning that because I'm on full screen here, so I can't see that. But feel free to chime in, and Tam or whoever is watching the chat, happy to talk or get interrupted as we go along. But I got plenty of content, and like I said, I have been officially accepted for Tableau conference. I was planning on going anyway, but I figured out, let me talk about my experience with what we did last year. So I think this is the official title that's going to be at the Tableau conference. And I'll also give some props to Interworks because they were definitely involved with our migration, and I would definitely recommend them as you go through with their expertise. But this is my agenda. So I've been told I got about an hour, so I'll try to keep to that and obviously answer any questions along the way, but give you a little bit of, start to finish from the pre-migration planning, talk about the differences, the challenges. We can go all levels because I've got expertise to, all levels of expertise there, but happy to also talk at it from a university perspective, as Vanderbilt's a private university in Nashville, Tennessee. But I'll talk about some of the communication plans that we had to do, what were the benefits of consulting, and again, thank you, Interworks. Talk about their role in this, some of the manual actions that had to be done by our users and our user base, creators, explorers, viewers, and admins. Some specifics around editing embedded data source credentials, which is one of the actions that probably took the heaviest amount of time to get done. I call it the licensing Tetris around LBLM and just managing our cloud trial because, you don't want to pay for the cloud until you're ready to go production. So it was kind of a game of Tetris, making all the pieces fit in our server and going back and forth. Talk about nested groups, another big thing that does go away in Tableau Cloud that we utilized, and an example pre and post migration, and how the folder structure remained mostly the same, and just some other notes. And then hopefully anyone that wants to come see me at Tableau conference, please look me up. I'll be happy to talk even further because I will have a topic. They haven't set the schedule, but I know I will be doing one round of this topic. And I believe they only gave me 20 minutes, unfortunately. So you're going to get the deeper dive, and I'm going to use this as a run to see what are the most important topics and what I'm going to have to cut. But yes, I am speaking. So there's the dates there. They gave us this nice little slide to share, and haven't posted to social media yet, but look forward to that in San Diego. So here's some stats. Nothing huge visual. I've been most of my life more on the server side, administration. I used to teach the server administration class. That's no longer offered. I was server certified when it was a thing, and now it's just a server certified associate, I believe it is. So I've been heavily involved with a lot of it, but from a Vanderbilt perspective, we are a small shop. We were a single 8-core license in server. We were grandfathered into that. I came on board to be the Tableau admin for server. And we just migrated this past October. And it definitely was a multiple months long process. I can go into those time details later, but I figured get into the technical aspects. So I was going to just kind of highlight, this is the same chart, but I put it kind of side by side with the post migration, and just want to call out a couple of things so you can see the stats. I couldn't grab the tags and the favorites from the admin insights. But if someone knows how to do that, I'd be happy to learn. But other than that, the other metrics that really changed, you can see our user base. We had about 885 users pre-migration. So we actually culled some of those and realized people weren't logging in. And I'd say probably half of those log in on a daily basis, probably even less, if I'm really being honest. But, we have a lot of licensed users, so we had that buffer going in. And obviously, we haven't really exceeded it. In fact, we've still gotten to it, so we haven't had to buy new licenses. I would say cost-wise, it was pretty much a wash. We didn't have to pay any extra money, and I'll talk about some of those things without getting specific costs. But the big one I want to call out here is data connections. So look at how that one blew up, because previously, we had a few embedded Excel workbooks, but it doesn't work too well on server because then everybody's got to include, local files. But with SharePoint Online, this has just blown up. I mean, there are so many people. I know it's not the best governance practice, but the fact that we got the same number of users accessing more data connections just shows that a lot of people are waiting to get to we're a Snowflake shop and an Oracle shop, but they might not be ready for data there. So they're using their SharePoint Online. And that's what these data connections are that really blew up. And, workbook wise, we're increasing, this is 4 months ago in October at the top. And then projects, groups, and everything else mostly remains the same, but just want to call out that one for sure to just kind of get you a scope of, what kind of a size shop we were at Vanderbilt here. We're a university of over 13,000 undergrad students, and then a graduate and PhD program with 10 plus colleges. So, we got a lot of stuff, and this is strictly for faculty and staff. We do not allow students to have access to it, for lots of reasons. And obviously we have data that is very secure. So some of the things that we shared with people is, content. So now I'll get into some of those technical things. And as most of you probably know, the biggest thing with server that goes away is we no longer have metrics and ask data, and that becomes Tableau Pulse moving forward. So, and permissions wise, we utilize locked projects as much as possible, but we also have a few unlocked projects, and I'll show you our folder structure at the end of this so you can kind of see how that works. But the big thing you'll see at the bottom here that we were able to take advantage of that I don't think anyone else will anymore is we sunsetted server in September, and they had a special price deal going on before they moved to the Tableau Plus licensing model. And we were able to get the data management add-on at a la carte cost, if you will. So that was kind of nice because if you saw from the stats, we're not a big flow shop. And even now, we got some more flows, but we're not utilizing them that much. So we didn't see the benefit of the scheduling mechanism in flows, and data management is a whole nother topic I can get into. But permissions wise, you now have virtual connections and database and table access. Both of those only come with the data management add-on. And if you saw from the stats too, we have not utilized that yet. So we got 0 virtual connections, but hoping to take advantage of that. We're just getting started with Tableau Pulse too. So I think we just have a couple of trial runs, but we're actually going to have a meeting in March to talk about deploying some more Tableau Pulse things. So that's kind of the precursor to it. And then I'll just highlight some of the differences. A lot of text on these, but I think a good reference for you to understand. If you haven't done a migration before, I'll be honest, I had not. In fact, all my years working for Tableau, I was the server guy. Never touched Tableau Cloud. So this was a new experience for me as a Vanderbilt employee. But I feel like I can instill that knowledge with you of what to watch out for. Login wise, the biggest experience, which was surprisingly not a big hiccup at all for users, was you got to log in with your email. coming to cloud, and we had used something called a VUNet ID, which was a unique character identifier for all users that would have a unique identifier. So that was no longer available. And the biggest problem, I'd say, going to cloud now, and I've got a challenge slide later, but is people that change their names, because then their email changes. So if you got a maiden name and then you get married or whatever, you choose to change your first or last name, or some people have extended versions of their name, like an Anthony or a Tony or something like that. So those are problems, but it really was not a big issue. That was my biggest fear coming in, is everybody's got to log in differently. But the single sign-on was seamless. We didn't have to use VPN because single sign-on took care of it, yet it was even more secure and locked down. We didn't need VU, Vanderbilt University IT support. They, of course, administered all of our upgrades previously, but they were no longer involved other than setting up our bridge connection, which is further on down the line here. Of course, the benefits of cloud is it's the latest version, but the downside, there's no alpha beta, as we called it, or people call it dev, test, QA environments. So you got to utilize folders or sites for that. Admin insights versus Postgres. So I thought that would be a big change for the downside or for the negative, but it was actually beneficial. Admin insights is a wealth of knowledge for auditing your server environment, almost better and more easily presentable than Postgres. But of course, anything that migrated from Postgres was gone because we don't have that access anymore. And then I called it the license Tetris, but the biggest change is you have to pay for your explorers and viewers. And a lot of people think that's negligible or negative, actually, but it was negligible for Vanderbilt. As I mentioned, going from a core license where we paid for that, we got rid of that. And in the end, we decreased the number of viewers and explorers, and our creator count actually went down too. So we still have a buffer with a lot of that, and haven't had to pay for a new license for 4 months, other than probably like 5 creators. I think overall we have about 100 creators. So some of that. And of course, Tableau Pulse is a big thing with Tableau Cloud. That's only available. That was one of the big, I would say selling points, if you want to call it that. But the fact that they're not putting Tableau Pulse into Server was a big reason why we wanted to move over. And then, like I said, as a bonus, we got the data management add-on kind of at the last minute before it became no longer an a la carte offering. So that was a benefit to get external assets. We have a separate data catalog product, but the integration with data management is definitely beneficial there. And then the Tableau Bridge for our local connections, which, being a Snowflake and an Oracle house, Oracle was the biggest thing for Bridge. We have a few SQL Server databases here and there. In a university with that many students, 13,000 students, we're going to have a lot of different disparate data sources on-prem. But like I said, the biggest one was having SharePoint and online for Excel files, which really exploded out people getting access to data and starting to play around in Tableau Cloud a lot more. And then Tableau Trust, I put the link there, but that's always a good website to keep on top of, because now all your downtime is controlled by them. In fact, we had one just yesterday morning where they always say it's available, but you may experience feature degradation or something like that. So it's a way to allow them to say there's uptime, but still users are going to get kicked out. And we have to, keep people informed of that, which leads to one of our biggest challenges, which was the communication. Oh, sorry, question.
Sorry, real quick, can you go back?
Yeah.
I answered the question, but I wanted you to maybe expand. Jesse asked, how do you manage changes validation without a dev test environment?
Yeah, and I'll show the folder structure later, but we have a workbook testing project for that. And then a lot of people are taking advantage of personal spaces. So that's a good way to do it, because admins can still see people's personal space. But folder structure was the way that we accomplished that.
And then real quick, with regards to, the downtime and the site upgrades and such, how often do they come?
They seem to come weekly, to be honest, with these notifications. But the thing that's annoying is Salesforce just, I get a text message that just says Salesforce maintenance, and you have to dig into the website to figure out what it is, which in the old version with Server, we were able to get an exact message from our IT department what it was. So again, I say it's never down completely, but people will experience interruptions. And I just try to navigate people we have a SharePoint site that communicates all of this. And that's my next slide with the communication is the best way to get that information disseminated to the users. But Tableau Trust mentions that, and you can get set up for text messages. The thing I don't like about it is you still have to click on a link to actually read the importance of the message, because otherwise the text just says Salesforce maintenance. Please go to this site to see what it is. So you can set up notifications for your particular pod, because every pod has like a prod east or whatever it's called. So you can get notifications just for your pod, and that's probably a couple of times a month I might get that. So
thank you.
Yeah. So with the communication, like I said, we had over 500 active users. Like I said, we had 800 licensed, or I would say not even licensed, but 800 named users in the system. A lot of them were unlicensed because we had a lot of faculty that sometimes they just want to look at something once a year or something. So we also kind of broke the model, and I'll talk about Interworks, where they say, oh, eliminate stale content that's 6 months old. Well, we're university, and this is an advancement tug, so you all know things happen in a cyclical yearly cycle, or a school year cycle from, anywhere from August to May. So, there's sometimes people that don't touch any visualizations in Tableau during the school year, and they just want to see when the census comes out. We run a school quarterly census, but at the summer census, they want to see the numbers after everybody's matriculated and graduated or whatever. So as a university, dictating stale content as a certain number of days is not a good, reliable method. So I'm sure a lot of you have encountered that as well. Some people just come up once a year. So communication is key. And we have a SharePoint page. We set up an internal Tableau user group. We're pretty fortunate because one of the leaders of the Nashville Tug, Lindsay Myers, I'll plug her name, is the leader of the Nashville Tug, and she's a university member, and a Tableau user at our university. So she doesn't do the administration, but she's in close contact with me a lot, with a lot of stuff. And so being part of the Nashville Tug, she's able to give me some guidance for, little things like Tableau swag giveaways and things like that, which was kind of fun for inspiring people to get onto Tableau at the university. So we do an internal tug that's separate from the Nashville Tug that meets in person about once every other quarter or something like that, 2 to 3 times a year. So we have that. Anyway, going back to all this text. So what were the challenges? As I mentioned, those were differences. The single sign-on was actually pretty seamless. That was the biggest IT support that we needed going to cloud, but it was kind of a set it and forget it with configuration, and it worked great. We needed to struggle to see how IT would support us after we moved to the cloud, because it would no longer be their responsibility. Although ironically, the team that we worked with was called the cloud team, but because Tableau Cloud is so low maintenance for configuration, they would not be involved anymore. So I am the administrator and a couple other people on my team, and I'm part of a team called Data and Strategic Analytics, which is a separate branch off of IT, but we work closely with them. As I said, all of our Postgres reports had to be replaced. We had some that users were using, like access to groups and things. The new thing with Tableau sites, there's a Cloud Manager now, and technically we're granted 3 sites, so yet we haven't taken advantage of it. But that's something to keep in mind too, is you might want to use sites for a dev and a test, even though I know in the old days they used to say don't use sites for dev, test, and prod maintenance. But with cloud, because you don't get any other choice, that's another alternative to the question about how do you manage an alpha beta site, because you don't have it with cloud. Validating permissions was also pretty smooth. That's where Interworks really came in handy. Running a lot of scripts. The timing of the old and new licenses was definitely a challenge. We kind of had a clock ticking because we do annual licenses that renew October 1st. So we knew we started in about May to communicate this, even though we didn't really start the implementation until about June or July. But we knew we had to end server at September. Otherwise, they were going to work with us, Tableau sales, but they were going to say, you might have to buy another year's license for Tableau, and then we'll just refund you once you turn it off. So, managing that, try to time it with your yearly license if that's the way you work now, with your server renewals and creator renewals as well. And then the bridge client, that was set up by our IT department in AWS, but it is owned by myself and the other Tableau site admins. So those were the challenges. Now, what are the benefits? Why do this if it's not worth it? Well, and I didn't even put it in here, but the pricing was negligible because we were core based and we had been grandfathered into that. I know they don't offer that anymore, and it's probably been a long time that they haven't. So if you're in that boat, great. I would say that's a good starting point for getting a negligible price comparison. If you are paying the subscription fees already for Server, you're going to have to assess that. And we had other people that were doing all the pricing assessments. I didn't get involved with that. But once we knew we could afford it, and then we had the fixed fee for InterWorks consulting as well, it was all definitely worth the benefits there. Admin Insights was very robust. Tableau Pulse is just on the cusp of what capabilities we can add because we weren't using metrics much before. And then Tableau Mobile became excited for a lot of people that are faculty and staff because they're not on computers all day. They're, running from class to class, whatever they're doing on campus. So having a mobile access without the need for a VPN was also huge for us and a big selling point.
Evan, some questions have come in from Ramesh. Any custom fonts other than regular fonts you guys use for your dashboards? And if yes, did you ask them to install those fonts?
I believe we did not have any custom fonts, but InterWorks was on top of that. So with whatever we had to do with custom fonts, I think we just had the Tableau fonts, but I believe those were included with Tableau Cloud. So that wasn't an issue. So yeah, we didn't have that issue with custom fonts. We didn't have a lot of customization. We didn't have any web data connectors, things like that. So again, very basic implementation, I would say, but that gave us the ability to have a successful migration. But again, InterWorks was very helpful with any of those types of customizations.
Okay. And then a question from Hans. Only one bridge. Does it service live extracts?
It does not service live extracts, no. So we use Snowflake for our live connections, and that's in the cloud. So that made it easy for Tableau Cloud to connect to. Although the downside of that is I feel like Snowflake will expire your tokens like every 30 days to 90 days or something like that. So users that use Snowflake to refresh live have to update their credentials, every month or two, which is just a Snowflake limitation. But no, Bridge was just for our Oracle and SQL Server instances, and those were all extracts.
Okay.
And then a single bridge, we found out there's actually a setting you can tweak. So the default is 10 concurrent instances per time period. And the great thing with cloud is that you can set any time period. You don't have to manage schedules anymore. So I guess I could add that in there too. That was a nice benefit. But we have a lot of extracts running anywhere from between 4 and 7 a.m. And what would we have? Published data sources. What was the number there again? It was, did I have that in here? Yeah, published data source. We only had 45 published data sources that were using extracts. They were all using extracts. So it wasn't a big load. And knowing that the default for Bridge is 10 per time never was an issue. And yes, I know single node, that's the biggest no-no for high availability, which is obviously what I would never teach in a Tableau class, knowing that from my history. But at Vanderbilt, just for the cost purposes, it's very easy to make your machine a backup bridge. And that's what I do, honestly. If we ever need it, my laptop can be a bridge client. And then the AWS one is the one that's always running. And we have not had any issues with that ever in the 4 months so far. So knock on wood there. That would be good. But that's been a nice benefit because Tableau Bridge has not had any issues as far as I can tell.
Okay. We've got lots of great questions coming in. Let me keep asking them until you tell me that you want to move on. Jim asks, pre-migration, did you support any public-facing content using the guest account? With cloud not having guests, did you need to explore workarounds?
Yeah, good question. We did not have the guest account. That was an IT risk, so we turned it off from the get-go. And the way that we took advantage of public-facing content is we have a Tableau public account that's owned by DSA. So you can actually look it up. I don't have that saved in front of me, but I can certainly forward that along, or you can search for a Vanderbilt DSA Tableau public site. So that's where we do like fact books and a lot of non-row level data. So we have a lot of aggregate data on student and faculty at the aggregate level that we publish to the public site. But yes, we did not use guest account, and the Tableau public site has served a good purpose for that.
Great. Melissa asks, have you run into issues with new releases breaking functionality in your dashboard? And if so, how have you dealt with this since you can't roll back to a prior version?
Yeah, good question. Nothing comes to mind with new releases. I know the group sets feature, for some reason, with each upgrade would turn off, and we haven't taken advantage of it. But that one thing I talk about, nested groups, group sets is a great feature to take advantage of that. We haven't needed it yet because we didn't have a large bit of nested groups, but yeah, nothing else comes to mind that I can think of. So the group set little checkbox turning off, and then that I forget that it's there unless you go to settings, but nothing else that comes to mind that we've had feature degradation at this point.
Okay. Steve asks, we have some large workbooks and data sources for which we use scheduled extracts for performance reasons. Does Cloud permit scheduled extracts, or is everything live via Bridge?
No, Bridge is what utilizes the scheduled extract. So yeah, and if anyone has a point of confusion there, I could talk offline, but Bridge, as I understand it, is just for the extract connections for refreshing them, and everything live should be in the cloud. We don't use live Oracle connections. We never did in the past. So maybe that was something that might be different for other schools. But because we moved to Snowflake, that was another reason that cloud works so seamlessly, because that was going to be our only source of live data moving forward. And our goal, which is not there yet, but our goal is to sunset Oracle at some point, which might be years down the road. But ultimately, everything in Oracle is going to go to Snowflake, and then we'll have the option of live or extracts with the cloud.
Okay. Rana commented that I noticed you didn't mention the lack of time spent on server upgrades as a benefit. We spend a lot of time on server upgrades and they often have bugs. Are cloud upgrades more reliable?
Maybe because I've been a Tableau employee, so it made it a lot easier for me to work with the IT department, since I was very familiar with server upgrades, having been a trainer before. So, you know, I don't know, maybe just experience spoke to that not being an issue, but I could certainly see the upside to not having to do upgrades. But we only did them like once a year. We were not one of these shops that had to have the latest version with the latest features. So, you know, we were on 23.1 in October of 24 when we migrated our server. So that gives you an idea. We were a year behind even on server when we migrated.
The next question is near and dear to my heart. Ramesh asked, did you experience network latency extracting data from your from your local network to Tableau Cloud?
No, but I got to give credit to Interworks for that. I didn't have to touch that. So Interworks Services was able to move all that stuff. And I know there's a size limit for something, but I don't know off the top of my head. So I'll have to research that. I'll probably put that in my TC conference, make a note of size limitations. But yeah, nothing that we had to worry about from our situation.
Okay. And Steve asks, we use some third-party extensions, info topics, super tables. Are those still available in cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're starting to take advantage of those now. Interesting to note that the Sankey one is a sandbox one, so that one works automatically. But the other ones, you, as an administrator, you go to the extensions tab and settings and just whitelist the URL for that one. Now, super tables, I feel like in certain situations you have to pay for something, but yeah, extensions are managed just the same way in cloud, and in fact gives us more opportunities to utilize them than before.
All right, a couple more, and then hopefully we'll let you get going with your presentation. Ron asks, how often does Bridge fail, and what are the reasons for its failing?
As I said, Bridge, knocking on wood, has not failed for us yet because it's in AWS cloud. So it's on all the time and it's a remote desktop connection. So I would say the only time it might fail is if you're not keeping up to date, because I do have to manually update the Bridge download, you know, when a new version comes out. But fortunately, I haven't had the experience of it failing. So my only guess could be is if too many extracts run at once and overload it. Because like I said, the default is 10 concurrent Bridge jobs at a time. You can tweak that. We've tweaked it to 20 with a configuration setting. But again, you can span it across multiple times. So yeah, luckily we haven't had that experience yet.
And a follow-up with that, how frequent do you need to upgrade Bridge?
I mean, they come out about the same as Server. So if we're not experiencing any issues, I don't worry about it. So maybe once a quarter, something like that. I mean, I think they release a patch update every month, but like I said, if we're not having any issues, I check it every quarter.
Okay.
I've done it twice since October.
We've got some other comments, but I'm going to let you go.
Yeah. Let's roll in the halfway point.
Super fascinating presentation.
Yeah. Thanks. This is great. So like I said, communication is a key, and the way we've handled that, which has worked well, is like I said, we have an internal SharePoint page that gives all the updates and links to training and videos, and we have a provisioning process that restricts people from access until they go through some training, self-service. And the nested groups was a big challenge, but I'll show you an easy workaround with that, with an example in our folder structure. And like I said, the email login versus a username was actually easier than expected, but the biggest challenge, which is very rare, but still people have it, is those that change their maiden names, which we've had maybe 10 people that have done that. But, you know, in a working situation, that's going to happen. So emails change, and if they're not aliased that with your IT department, it becomes a new login. The SSO.
I think you have moved on beyond this slide. If you want to.
Was that?
You moved on beyond this one too.
Yep. Oh, okay. Yeah.
There we go.
Thank you. So yeah, with our planning and communication with that, and I can show you our old URL because it's obsolete now, but you can see we had tableau.app.vanderbilt was our VPN controlled URL, and we were lucky enough to have our IT department put a redirect to that. So anybody that went to the old server post migration were automatically getting redirected to the new one. And since VPN wasn't required, they were already connected, and the SSO page would pop in. That since the new year is no longer available, and we've had a couple of people that haven't logged in since October where they're like, oh, what happened to my server? And we had to inform them. But again, resources for the SharePoint page. We do a monthly newsletter that also releases to all our Tableau users that we use for that. And, you know, the communication has gone very well. I did some live training online as well for all our creators, which was about 100 people. And then the consulting, you know, was definitely a benefit. So got to give them the props for sure. Interworks, it was a single one-time fee. Happy to talk details offline with that, but they were a great resource, or I can just give you the link to their website. They have a migration checklist that I'll link here. If you haven't used them, they were our sales rep too. So they were the ones reselling our creator licenses. So we already had a relationship there that made this very seamless. And they were able to designate 3 people, including the sales rep, to work with this migration, who met with us weekly we started this in May with the planning. We implemented it in July, and we were live in October. So that's kind of the time. And they were with us every step of the way on weekly or bi-weekly calls. We did have to go through some governance to get them access. So the one person that was the technical migration specialist had to get access to Vanderbilt systems. So he had to sign waivers, you know, acknowledge that he wasn't going to access our data and all that fun stuff. So that was a little bit of a, you know, red tape to go through to get him access, but to be expected. And then the other person was the project manager with the expertise, but didn't need direct access to our system. So it made it pretty seamless there. Like I said, we had the weekly checkpoints. And looking back, I would definitely recommend it, because unless you are a scripting person yourself, which I am not, they ran all the scripts and it went so seamless. And that's where I was able to get all those stats so quickly and easily pre-migration. So the other thing that Vanderbilt does that I would recommend, I don't know if other schools do this, but it was a cool new experience since I'm only 3 years in higher education, but they have a designated project management team, and we got a special Vanderbilt person to be our project manager of this migration project, because he was the liaison to all of our other people that we needed, like IT for Amazon Web Cloud, or IT for single sign-on, or the SCIM setup for Windows Active Directory, all those technical things. The Vanderbilt project manager knew how to find those people, and that was a great benefit too. So having a third party but internal Vanderbilt project manager that had nothing to do with the technical migration, but everything to do with the knowledge of people to contact for every job that had to happen internal, was also a great benefit. And he was there as part of those weekly calls as well. So great benefit there.
Evan, another question. Was there a freeze on Tableau Server while testing Tableau Cloud after the migration?
Yes, so we had a freeze for a month. So September was when we had to finish our license, and the sales team was gracious enough to extend our license to the end of October. So we had that grace period there. But when we went through the migration, we did freeze everything on a date in September. I think one of the slides actually has it on here when I sent it to our users, where we actually went through. Oh yeah, there it is. So September 20th was our freeze date. So we sent, this is the literal slide that I sent to our creators, and we did hands-on training over Zoom to everybody in batches of like 10 each. So I had to do a lot of trainings, and I recorded it. But we walked people through how you log into server and then log out, and then how you log into cloud, because we basically put the onus on the owners of content to migrate their content after September 20th. So September 20th was when the migration happened. We didn't go live until October 14th. So yeah, there was almost a 30-day window where we had to validate stuff, and then our project owners would take care of, or sorry, not project owners, but our content owners would take care of the move of content or updates after the content freeze. And being that we only had 100 or less creators, that was not a difficult thing to manage either. So yeah.
And then did you run into any problems with permissions after the migration?
There was a few, the occasional hiccup, and the nested groups was the biggest challenge. But yeah, I'll show you that example since we're kind of jumping around here. But this is an example of how nested groups work. And from a school setting, this is probably common for a lot of you, where you have faculty for sure that are going to be members of the individual school. And then they will roll up to whether it's undergraduate or graduate or PhD or all schools. And you lose that. And so that permission is lost. And we thought about group sets as the option, but as a new feature, I didn't want to test that out pre-migration. So it hasn't been a showstopper. And what we really had to do was just manually add all the people to the 3 or 4 different parent groups that they belong to. So if Joe was a member of the Arts and Science Office of the Dean Child Project, and that was the group that they belonged to, because we put a Tableau prefix on it, then we just added them also to the parent groups at the same time. So that was a manual process. Interworks might have been able to script it, but we said that it was better for me to manually maintain it because we could test it. So that actually worked pretty easily. We only have 10 schools, so it wasn't a huge thing there. And then we have a handful of PhD and graduate programs. So it wasn't a huge showstopper, but there was going to be manual work, and it worked out pretty smoothly for us. So a couple of other things here that I will highlight, and these are just screenshots of the stuff. So this was a Postgres report that we had to change, where we give all of our creators access to all the groups in Tableau that give access to projects, so that we can kind of delegate administration. And we use the term radical collaboration. That's been designated by our chancellor, and he's been a great support and proponent for getting people to collaborate. So giving this access, we just had to rebuild it with admin insights because it was connecting to Postgres and no longer available in the cloud environment. But letting creators see what groups users belong to before they publish content was a great benefit that took the hands off of me for administration and gave lots of added benefits there. And then editing the data sources was the other thing. Remember, I told you we only had 45 published data sources, but the embedded data sources also had to re-embed the credentials. This was another one. Interworks was willing to do it with a script, but we thought it was too much of a risk to embed even masked passwords in a database to transfer over. So we just did that manually as well. So, because the passwords are clear text in the XML. So we just had to be careful about that. And we used a resource account. You can see that there for our Oracle instances. So we just had to manually do that. But again, we let the project or the content owners that own these data sources do it. So no administrators own data sources. So again, no work extra for us. And we have a generic Vanderbilt account email that we could use for anybody that had questions with that. Then our licensing, we used LBLM, definitely an advantage, but one little hiccup that I realized that kind of messed us up is we ended up using we used Ping Federate as our SSO, which apparently is an unsupported version, which I technically knew about, but didn't realize the implications because the configuration worked seamlessly. When it didn't work was grant license on sign-in. When we had that checkbox turned on, we were not allowed to migrate all of the users and content. So we had to uncheck all the groups. And what I ended up, the workaround to do that is create a local group that grants license on sign-in, but it's not tied to AD because we do have Windows Active Directory. And I know I put that here. I'm kind of jumping around, but this is a screen of what our Active Directory looks like. And I was granted access from our IT department to do this, even though it's normally an IT function. But all of our Tableau user groups have a Tableau prefix. And then we also have a Tableau everyone group that allows for the synchronization with SCIM. Again, I didn't get involved with any of this other than designating to our IT team who the users were that had to belong to Tableau everyone. So they would be the ones to talk to, but happy to forward questions about the SCIM setup or AD technical stuff on to our IT team because they did a great job. And the fact that it was an unsupported product and it still worked was pretty amazing and very beneficial, and glad in our testing of this out in July and August before we went to live cloud to see it work was great. But it was that checkbox for grant roll on sign-in that took us a couple of weeks to figure out that was causing the sync to not work. So you can't do that with Ping Federate. You might be able to with Azure or Okta, but we were not that shop, so we weren't able to take advantage of that. So what I think I'll show now is a little bit of our content structure, just from a high-level naming convention without going into the details of it. But this is kind of what we set up from the Explore menu. And the green is how we leave open to everybody access. So remember, as I said, workbook testing became our kind of development environment. Everything would go into that area, and we've set up folders, or I have set up folders that only certain groups can access. And then the promotion is users promote from workbook testing to their respective folders. Radical collaboration is an open group. So we have other radical collaboration folders. This is a graduate funding folder. Internal fact books that had student row level data was secured, but the public facing one is on our public site. And then we have some quality of life survey data that was also technically public surveys, but they were for a select group of people and faculty. So that was also restricted. And of course, our samples were wide open. Workbook testing was wide open. But the schools and administration area, and CDS stands for Certified Data Sources. And of course, our admin insights, we never let access to default folder. That's just the permissions template. So this was kind of our high level structure. And this literally is all the folders users see at the top level. And they can see it all, but then they won't be able to see the content within schools or administration. So they see the folder called school and the folder called university administration, but they won't get access to content unless they belong to a group that gives that particular access. So with that said, I know I've jumped around a lot, but I'll show a couple of kind of wrap up slides. And then if there's any last questions, I can take those. So I told you I trained our creators, but then we also had to start paying for explorers and viewers. The way that worked out for us is it turned out there was actually, of the 100 creators that we had licensed pre-migration, 40 of them decided they didn't want to be creators anymore. So we were able to demote them to Explorer. We still have to pay the Explorer license or the creator license, but technically you can borrow creator licenses from Explorers. And so when you look at it on our system, we actually have a fewer number of Explorers and a fewer number of creators and a larger number of Explorers that balanced it all out. And so kind of working. Like I said, we've only had to pay for 5 new creator licenses in 4 months. And our Explorer and viewer count has been manageable because we had 800 pre-migration, and we just keep them unlicensed until they actually grant roll on sign-in, which is the local group that I got created there. So this kind of summarizes everything here, and then I'll open up for questions and we can see what else we got. But logging into cloud with the email address with single sign-on. We use Duo Mobile, was seamless, worked smoothly. Few exceptions with people that changed their names, but that was actually a lot less headache than I was expecting. The new interface, I highlighted the differences, but activating your creator license also had to be done by the users. Navigating the folders, we had the users kind of self-serve, so if there was permission hiccups, they would tell us because we had our DSA team go in first for like that September month before everybody else was publicly or internally available to that. And then where to publish content securely. We had the workbook testing. We may spin up these alternate sites that are technically available, because I believe, unless they've changed it, every new cloud user gets 3 sites now. So, and you get access to a cloud manager as well. So that's kind of a new benefit. And then the new features, we're not getting Einstein AI. We're not going to go to Tableau Plus, the full enterprise package, because we're not a Salesforce shop. But we take the advantage of Tableau Pulse. We got the data management add-on in the nick of time when it was still an a la carte offering. That's no longer available. We can see impact and lineage, data quality, the virtual connections we hope to spin up soon. And the fact that there's no VPN really was an added benefit, because our faculty can now go mobile and view things on their phone that previously required a VPN, and we didn't. Vanderbilt employees don't get company phones, if you will, so the VPN was not accessible on a cell phone for most staff there. And that's pretty much all I had. So,
awesome. We have more questions for you.
Yeah. Feel free.
All right, from Hans. As usernames changed to email, did you have issues with row-level security in dashboards?
Row-level security. We have not, because we use row-level security only for groups and don't use it for users. So as long as the user belongs into a group, we add them or remove them, and then they get added. And actually, we don't have a very extensive row-level security right now. In fact, the only 2 departments that are utilizing it is our HR department and our athletics department, because they look at a lot of budgets. And schools have not really implemented it, because most school data is kind of in a silo. But yeah, we haven't had a need for row-level security. So yes, again, that was also another capability that Interworks was able to take on, is transferring all the row-level security permissions. But because we did it at the group level, it wasn't that big a deal.
Okay. How did you handle URL actions from Tableau Server to cloud?
Yeah, that's another one that Interworks was easily able to take advantage of with a script. So basically, we just had to identify, and Interworks did that, where they identified all the URL actions we had. I think that's specifically probably referring to ones that go to a server URL, which of course is going to change. But because the redirect was in place for the first 2 months of the end of the year, the last 2 months of the end of the year before 2024 ended, it actually wasn't that much of an issue. And then Interworks identified any other URL actions that had to be changed. And again, we put the onus on the content owners, and they took care of that, no problem, and worked pretty well.
Okay. How did you move content which could not be migrated using CMP SDK?
Well, to be honest, I don't think Interworks utilizes it. I don't know how they do it. We never even talked about the CMT SDK. So they had their own product, whatever you want to call it. So they were the ones responsible. That was kind of a black box for Vanderbilt. So once we gave that one person that needed to have access to the Vanderbilt system access, he ran the script, and we got a data dump in an Excel of what all the content was and what was going to migrate and what wasn't. And then we just had to pick and choose what action we had to take. So was that a specific question? I forgot what
it was just, how did you move the content? And I think you've answered.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know if it was specific type of content, but yeah. For sure.
Yeah. With regards to the licenses, why did you have to continue to pay for a creator license if 40 of them downgraded to Explorer?
So technically we didn't, but it wasn't worth the process to try to get a refund for a creator to then pay for an Explorer. So we just kind of ate the cost, if you will. So, like I said, right now, I think our numbers are we're at about 65 out of 100 creators, which gave us 35 extra Explorers that we could use. So yeah, we're probably paying more for it, but because it was negligible anyway, it was less of a hassle than trying to refund creators and then allow for Explorers, which you have to pay for anyway. And I forget the exact numbers on all that, but I want to say Explorers is about half the cost of a creator. So, we're eating the cost for like 35 licenses a little bit. But the hope is that we grow our creators, and then we don't have to purchase a new creator license for the time being.
Yeah.
But that's the Tetris playing. That's kind of the Tetris playing out, because you got to kind of remove some creators to add Explorers, and it's kind of a fine line of playing that game.
Well, it certainly adds complexity when before we just had the server license and that was simple.
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge. And the other thing I should mention, I think it was in the slides, but I might not have read it, is we defaulted all of our explorers down to viewers when they came into cloud, and we waited for them to ask us to go up to an explorer. Because the great thing is Admin Insights traces all of the explorer type actions, and most of the action that was being done by explorers was download to Excel. So of course that's not a best practice. So we were just like, okay, if you want to download to Excel, you're a viewer now, so you can't do that. If you want to do it, you got to tell me, and we got to give you some training, and then we'll give you an Explorer license again. So that was a way we just kind of bit the bullet and said, you're going to be a viewer by default, even if you were an Explorer, and we wait, for ask permission later instead of granting permission now.
Okay, and then this is, I'm sure everyone wants to know this. How is the performance on cloud compared with server?
I mean, we haven't done any benchmarking metrics, but I'd say great. I mean, no issues whatsoever. We've added a lot more accelerated views, and everybody on Snowflake seems to be pretty happy. I will say a lot of our creators are a little bit miffed, if you will, about the performance while they're designing and connecting, but that would be user training issues where they don't necessarily know about using extracts versus live connections. So we might have to do some future trainings for that, but development wise, building the dashboards has become a little bit slower. Anecdotally, I don't have numbers to prove it, but from the people that I've talked to, they are finding it's slower to build dashboards, but once they're out there in cloud, it's performing great and no complaints. But that's another downside, is I haven't figured out a way to capture performance recording on cloud, because that was available on server and it's not on cloud. So
that's great to know.
Yeah, all good.
So another question, how did you enable MFA, and did you use SCIM or Entra?
Yeah, we used SCIM with Azure, but not with Entra. So we had Ping Federate, so we found we didn't need to enable Entra for that, but because we had Windows Active Directory, there, again, that was an IT function that they had to turn on. So there's some setting in Azure to make the AD linkable to the cloud somehow. And I'm probably saying that wrong, but yeah, we configured SCIM. We configured single sign-on MFA with Duo Mobile is our app that we use for single sign-on. And that's good for 30 days. So every 30 days, somebody has to re-log in with Duo. But the nice thing is now with cloud, because there's no VPN needed, once somebody opens up their laptop, we usually had to log into the VPN to start the day. They can be on cloud with a browser open without having to log into VPN, because single sign-on takes care of itself. So that's been pretty smooth.
Okay. Is it extra cost to have 3 sites instead of 1 site?
It wasn't for us in September, but again, I could be misquoting now, so I haven't seen the pricing, how it's changed. But my understanding is, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, that we were given 3 sites. Because Cloud Manager was the new product just coming out in September, October. And then the Cloud Manager gave every site admin access to 3 separate sites that we haven't utilized yet. So yeah, I don't know
Hans is confirming that 3 sites is standard now.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right, another question. The last question, is the recording available? It will be available on our YouTube site. And then the other question is, are you using Hyperforce in Tableau Cloud? Is it any faster?
I don't think we had control of that, but I do recall seeing a message. In fact, I'd have to check that, because I know we're about to upgrade to 2025 and we get the warning message there. And I think Hyperforce was part of that as well. So yeah, I haven't looked into that, but I do remember seeing messages. And as far as we're concerned, it's just something that Tableau does, but we don't have control over it. So yeah, I believe it's using Hyperforce in the future, if not already.
That's great. We're at the end. There's a question that I think Ron will be better able to answer. Evan, thank you so much. This is so much great information.
Yeah, I will be checking my own recording just to see, because this will be a good way to fine tune my presentation for the Tableau conference. So yeah, look forward to speaking again with some of these questions to fine tune my content for the conference, if you are so interested to hear me again.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Evan, for sharing your experience and those tidbits, those takeaways that we wouldn't know until you told us.
Thank you. And you
Post
guys
this
have access
database.
to the deck, so you'll be sharing that, right?
Fantastic. Yeah, so it's this video is recorded. It'll be on our LinkedIn channel. So it's the Advancement Tableau User Group LinkedIn channel. It'll also be attached to the event registration page, and it'll be on the YouTube channel, which it may take a moment to pull it up, but it's the it's the overall TUG YouTube channel, and that's where we'll point to. Yes, thank you, Jesse. She is money. Appreciate everyone joining us. Evan, thanks again. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
Congratulations for being selected. I know there are an incredible number of submissions, and so that should be a lot of fun. And sounds like you have a very solid shop, and they're in great hands with you. And things are going smoothly, right? Like it sounds like there's a lot of nervousness, maybe, but not a lot of issues.
Exciting time. Yeah. Definitely room to improve, but we're excited. Yeah.
Awesome. I love the radical collaboration. Right? No silos. All right. Thanks again, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tam. Thanks, Mohammed. Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it.
Everyone.
Take care, Evan. Bye-bye.